welcome to this morning's event. My name is Anthony Cooney and I'm the Chief Executive of Fingal Chamber. And we're pleased you could join us for this latest event in our Political Leaders series. This series aims to help our members discover what issues are being addressed and what the future holds for businesses of all sizes in our community, with government department briefings, engagement opportunities, and updates on supports that can help you and your business adapt to an evolving economy. This webinar will feature a presentation from the Minister for Housing, Local Government and Heritage, Darragh O'Brien TD, and will be followed by a Q&A session. If you have any questions, please use the Q&A feature in your Zoom toolbar, and we will do our best to get to them all. But first, to address the attendees, I would like to invite Fingal Chamber President Andrea Malloy to say a few words.
Thank you, Anthony, and good morning and welcome, Minister Darragh O'Brien TD, fellow Chamber members and invited guests. My name is Andrea Malloy and I'm President of the Fingal Chamber, which is the region's largest business organisation. Fingal Chamber helps businesses of all sizes to grow and develop by providing members with opportunities to influence policy, connect with businesses and professionals, train their workforce, promote their business and trade internationally. The Chamber is committed to promoting local economic development and enhancing the economic prosperity and quality of life across the region, whilst ensuring local businesses have a competitive advantage. The primary services the Chamber offers to members include advocacy and lobbying support, where we liaise with government departments, engage with policymakers and the media, and directly represent on industry and community committees. The Chamber also coordinates upskilling and training programmes. This is provided through Fingal Chamber SkillsNet, where we operate and promote subsidised training determined by business needs, customised and delivered locally. We are also very proactive with our networking and events programme, where we host regular government and key stakeholder briefings, a business networking series, and a variety of social events. The Fingal Chamber website also has an exclusive Members Information Centre. This allows members to network online and profile their business, share any news updates, events, job vacancies, and special offers with the business community. Over a year ago, like many, our operations were forced to change, but the Chamber quickly adapted to working with COVID-19. As the Chamber staff moved seamlessly to working virtually for most of our services, we reacted to the new reality by changing our focus to helping businesses survive and reopen. Looking ahead, we have lots happening over the coming weeks and months. If you are already a Chamber member, I encourage you to check out and join in our upcoming activities, which are listed on the Fingal Chamber website. If you're not yet a Chamber member, you can find out more information online on fingalchamber.ie or by contacting a member of our team to find out how membership can benefit your business specifically. I do hope you find today's event useful, and on behalf of the Chamber and myself, I wish you and your business every success in the future. I would also like to sincerely thank Minister Darragh O'Brien TD for joining us this morning and being so generous with his time. Thank you for your attendance, and I'll hand you back to our host for today, Fingal Chamber Chief Executive Anthony Cooney. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrea. First of all, a reminder that if you have any questions, please use the Q&A feature in the Zoom toolbar. Now I'm very pleased to introduce the Minister for Housing, Local Government and Heritage, Darragh O'Brien TD. Minister.
Thank you very much, Anthony, and indeed thanks, Andrea, and to Fingal Chamber for inviting me to speak to you today, albeit virtually. We're getting used to these type of sessions, but hopefully not in the not too distant future we'll be able to hold physical events again where we can meet up. Could I just say, look, for myself, firstly, it's a real pleasure to be speaking to you this morning as Minister for Housing, Local Government and Heritage. But just as importantly, it's been a great honour for me to represent Fingal, the businesses and the people of Fingal as a public representative since 2004. And indeed, Fingal's well represented at Cabinet as well. If you look at myself from the Taoiseach, Chief Whip Jack Chambers and the Minister for Children, Roderick O'Gorman. So like in everything we do, I think Fingal's punching above its weight, and we're working very well with our colleagues. But look, today is a really opportune And, you know, I know many of you who will be on the call. I've met many of you. I've had the pleasure of being in your places of work and meeting with your staff and trying to support you. And that's what will endeavour to continue to do as Minister for Housing, an issue that I might turn to in a moment, and its relevance obviously to Fingal as pretty much the youngest county in the country, and a microcosm for Ireland indeed, with the mix of urban and rural, different types of businesses, different types of families as well. But look, it's a good week this week, if I could say. There is real light at the end of that famous tunnel, and that light is very bright now. Monday really heralded a new dawn. Intercounty travel started again. Click and collect services are permitted this week, and full retail, thankfully, will reopen from next Monday. People can meet outdoors, indoors if they've been vaccinated, and I've seen that vaccination bonus with my own parents and their friends, and it's fantastic to really see it. And perhaps really importantly, that vaccination program is really ramping up and accelerating at an incredible pace. And I know it faced a lot of criticisms, like many things from time to time do in Ireland, but the strategy was there, the implementation is there, and now we're looking at accelerate. We've over 35% of the population over the age of 16 and older with at least one dose, and over 500,000 people now fully vaccinated. And I think we'll hit our 2 millionth vaccination dose actually this week, which is great. And thankfully for myself, you'll see personal services reopened this week as well. So I was in the Grafton Barber in Malahide yesterday morning, and it badly needed a haircut for the first time since December, I can tell you. So again, that was timely. And I see Anthony got rid of the beard as well, which is also good. But look, to turn to matters that it has been a very tough and challenging year for business of all sizes, particularly the SME sector, and acutely in the areas of hospitality, retail, aviation, which I want to turn to as well, which is so important for us in Fingal. But upon taking office last year, nearly a year ago, one of my earliest priorities, along with Minister for State Peter Burke, was to secure funding to provide a waiver of commercial rates for businesses impacted by the pandemic, while simultaneously making sure that we supported local authorities to carry out that work. And we did work hard in government with colleagues to ensure that there was a full 100% waiver, that, you know, and that it was a simple and easy administered scheme to give a real business support and to remove some of the costs for businesses as well. In 2020, we provided a 6-month 100% waiver, as I said, to the tune of €900 million. And I secured that funding then to move forward and to ensure that we fund local authorities like Fingal and the 30 other local authorities across the country. In this year, 2021, we've guaranteed a commercial rates waiver to the end of Q2 2021 for businesses most seriously impacted by ongoing restrictions. And we will be looking at how we move that forward into the rest of the year. Any further waiver will obviously be a decision that government will make, that I will have an input to. But I want to ensure that those businesses that are reopening, particularly in the sectors that have been affected so badly, continue to receive reliefs. And I think our Taoiseach and Minister Michael McGrath and Minister Donoghue have already highlighted that with regard to the EWSS scheme as well, in particular pandemic unemployment payments, that there will be no cliff edge. We'll continue to support this economy and our people as long as we need to ensure that we support businesses over the end of this pandemic. In total, we will have spent so far, just to say on the rates waiver alone, 1.2 billion. And I think it has been welcomed by most businesses there, and it's a real and important support. Other, government supports to help people and help our society meet the significant challenges that the pandemic have faced and have presented to us all. And we have ensured that we put a comprehensive package to help businesses and workers during the pandemic, including the employment wage subsidy scheme. I mentioned the pandemic unemployment payment, the COVID-19 restriction support scheme, the CRSS scheme, which is a really valuable support for business, the low-cost loans, the deferral, and indeed the warehousing of tax liabilities. So when you put all of that together from an expenditure perspective, aside from the low-cost loans, the state has spent approximately €11.5 billion so far over the last 12 months in relation to supporting jobs and supporting the business sector. And that is something that we've been when you compare us to our European colleagues and our nearest neighbour, I think compares very favourably and has worked so far, but there will be no cliff edge. I want to say that to your members today, Andrea, as well, and to you, Anthony, that we'll ensure that supports remain targeted and in place for as long as they need to happen. The outlook is quite bright in relation to the bounce back of the economy and in relation to the projections for how our economy, which is very resilient, which is very diverse, and we see that in Fingal in particular with the different types of businesses we have, from horticulture to high tech to aviation to banking to construction, right the way through. And that is, as I said earlier on, a microcosm really of our country, because it actually demonstrates clearly not just the population but the different business types and different employment types. We do, though, however, know that there will be a sad reality for some, that some businesses won't recover. And that's why government have committed time and again that there'll be no cliff edge, as I said. We know that some sectors will also be slower to recover than others. And we're firm in our commitment that supports will remain and will be phased out gradually as the economy recovers. We also want to make sure that those businesses that don't reopen, that we have funds in place to be able to help those entrepreneurs and those businesses to maybe pivot to other areas within the economy. We do know this summer, thankfully, and hopefully the weather will bear up. Today is a decent day for that summer will be an outdoor one, as the Taoiseach has said. And my colleague Catherine Martin announced a €17 million scheme for outdoor dining in partnership with Fáilte Ireland and the local authorities across the country. Fingal County Council have been very involved in that, and I've been engaging directly with them on it. And you know what I'd say is, while we refer to this summer being outdoors, the scheme also provides for a longer term strategy for local authorities to develop appropriate, permanent, weatherproofed outdoor dining infrastructure. Something we need in Ireland, as people will recognise, but also reimagining our public spaces all across our county, how we can use them better, not just for our businesses, if you don't mind me saying, but for our people too. And as we look towards, meeting the challenge of climate change as well, as to how we can improve connectivity between our towns and villages, and between our city and our suburbs, indeed, through walking and cycling infrastructure, which are some very exciting project just about to commence in Fingal in relation to the Fingal Greenway, or the Broadmeadows Way, linking initially Donabate to Malahide, but the plan further, as people know, is to go all the way to Balbriggan. And that won't just be a draw for, I think, for tourists and for people to use it for leisure, but would also provide a real connectivity between our towns and villages as people work. So, there are quite exciting things happening in our own area. In my own department, just to support what Minister Martin has been doing, I've signed regulations that will continue to allow restaurants operate as takeaways right through to the end of the year. That would have expired, so they will not have to seek planning permission. Again, it's a real support for those businesses. And I've also provided that there will be no fee for the street furniture license for this year. Applications will still be made, but no fee. And the usual fee is about €125 per table. I've also amended the existing street furniture license to bring awnings and coverings into a new class under the license, so businesses won't have to seek specific planning permission. So it's just some small but tangible changes as well that have been made to support particularly our hospitality sector. Just finally, Andrea and Anthony and members, if I could just turn to the area of housing. We continue apace with our housing plans. There has been some disruption, obviously, with output due to the construction closure, but thankfully we're now fully back up and running since the 4th of May, and residential construction 2 weeks prior to that. I recently launched our Affordable Housing Bill 2021, and it's the most comprehensive standalone piece of legislation dedicated to providing affordable homes for our young and not so young people in the history of the state. And I'm pleased to tell you that that piece of legislation I'll be bringing to the Seanad on Monday, and I intend to get that legislation passed before the end of the year. Now, what does that mean for Fingal? Fingal is one of the youngest counties, if not the youngest in the country. And there's many of our working people out there who are working very, very hard, paying rent, some of them at rates above what they should be, or living with their parents and trying to save every cent that they have, but cannot reach or attain the honest and just aspiration that they want to have of owning their own home. And we're going to change that. In the Affordable Housing Bill, there are 4 distinct measures to support home ownership, because I've continually said, I believe in home ownership. As I said, it's a just and honest aspiration, but one I believe should be supported by the state. So the measures I'm bringing in, backed by real finance, are going to help unlock supply in this area. And I'm really pleased to say that Fingal have been an exemplar so far. The scheme that they've launched, the first one in Lusk, in North County Dublin, with house prices ranging between 165 and 265,000 for first-time buyers. Now that's real affordability. And we'll also bring in a portable affordable measure called shared equity, which is going to help our young people to bridge that affordability gap without adding debt to them. So these are real measures that we're targeted and focused to deliver thousands of affordable homes, and many of those will be in Fingal. And there are some significant plans there indeed, in Ballamastone and Donabate, in Rush and beyond, and in Dublin 15, also in Churchfields. So on top of that, though, we're providing funding for the largest ever house building program for social homes. We have a target of 9,500 new public homes this year alone. And we will, in July, be announcing our Housing for All strategy, which will show a multi-annual plan for housing. This government have committed to delivering 50,000 new social homes to really tackle the issue of our social home waiting list, and we will do that. And then coupled with that is the affordability measures that I'm bringing forward. If I could just mention as well, I know a priority for all of us and as a chamber are those who are much worse off than us, and I think acutely are those who are homeless. And my main priority is to continue tackling the issue of homelessness in our society. Thankfully, within the last 12 months, we've seen a significant decrease, particularly pronounced in child and family homelessness, down nearly 40%, and overall down just short to 20%. But how we're going to do that is providing those permanent homes for families and ensure that there are protections in place for tenants as well. So we're making progress in those areas. It's such a vast portfolio that I hold as well. I haven't even touched on planning, on water infrastructure, or indeed the really important part of my portfolio, which is heritage. But hopefully that has just given you and Andrea and Anthony and your members just a brief overview of some of the work that we're undertaking right now. There are other pieces that we're working on, such as the Land Development Agency, which is how we're going to use our state land better and put it to productive use. That piece of legislation has passed second stage in the Dáil too. So the 2 big pieces of legislation which are going to support home ownership and support the driving the supply that we need of 33,000 homes a year will be passed by the Oireachtas by this summer. So listen, I won't delay you any further. I'm interested to interact with your members and take any questions. Just thanks so much for the opportunity to speak to you today. It is something special speaking to my own chamber in my own area, and the work that you carry out on behalf of your members is exceptional. And it's not that I've been to many events, and I've had the pleasure of hosting you in Leinster House and showing people around and dealing with many of your members on the business, the day-to-day issues that they have. So look, thanks so much again for the opportunity to talk to you today, and looking forward to the rest of the session.
Okay, thank you very much, Minister. We have a number of questions that are starting to come in now, and some came in earlier this morning, actually, and yesterday evening. And we've tried to break them down into 2 different component parts. One is probably under ministerial brief, and the other part then will be under constituency issues, particularly relevant to the businesses in the community. We might just take the ministerial brief first, if that's okay.
Sure.
No. And just in relation to, I suppose, your vision for housing, and as a government minister, and I think it's fantastic that you've got this portfolio and you're a local TD. But what would be, as you would see it, your legacy issue? The legacy that you may leave behind you at some stage throughout your tenure as a Minister for Housing in particular, because it's something that's exercising the minds of a lot of our members, and that they have employees who can't afford to buy a house. So for you, what would that you hope your legacy to be?
Yeah, only a year in the job, so I'm not thinking about legacy yet, okay, as you understand. But I suppose that's okay. But I suppose if I could say, maybe to phrase it that, my priority, and I know exactly what you mean, Anthony, and thanks for the question. There are a number of priorities, but to try to answer it as honestly as I can, the whole affordability issue is one that I feel acutely. every single day, I meet people in our own constituency who are working hard, have got good jobs, who've invested in themselves, have, made those sacrifices, and, just feel that they cannot get that extra step and they want to own their own home. Most renters actually do want to be able to own something that's secure, something that's affordable, and something that's pretty much either in their own town or village or in their own area. And it gives people, like, home ownership is good for people, it's good for communities, it's good for the country. Okay. And I suppose what I want to ensure, and one of my priorities, and if it is indeed a legacy, is that we brought affordability back into the Irish housing market, but fundamentally delivering affordable homes. And that's why I've been so focused on ensuring that the legislation, from the day that I came in here into the Custom House, the first piece of work was in relation to moving on affordability, changing the structures even within here in the Custom House, setting up an affordability team here to look at measures that we can bring in. So with the legislation that I have in place that are going to empower local authorities to directly build affordable homes for first-time buyers, with some exceptions too, for people who may have been divorced and don't own a property anymore, or someone who may have had to dispose of properties through personal insolvency, and that we're going to give us a second chance there. There will be some exceptions, but predominantly for first-time buyers is to allow local authorities build them again, which Fingal are one of the exemplars and are starting this year. Secondly is our shared equity piece, which is not debt-based, which is targeted and focused at those who really need it, who could get a mortgage, but just can't get that gap between their mortgage amount and the purchase price amount. And that piece, the state will take an equity that there will be a very low servicing charge on, with no requirement to pay that back. So not a double debt payment, not a double mortgage or that, something that's worked in other jurisdictions. And I suppose in the area of housing, if we don't change what we're doing, and I'm talking specifically on affordability in this issue, we're going to get the same results. Now, that's why we need to change. And that's why there's been such a discussion around my affordability bill, because some, for some change is uncomfortable, but what people voted for and what our young people want is change in housing. And that's what I'm going to deliver. So what we're going to do is put affordability and home ownership right back at the center of housing solutions in Ireland, something that used to be here, but we've slipped away from. There are many others I could talk about, but to give one, that is the one, Anthony.
I think it's a very relevant point that it's affordability is probably the singular big issue. Delivery of a quantity of housing should help with the affordability piece, because it's the old supply and demand issue. One of the questions we got in relation to the provision of social or affordable housing was around disability. And there's been a lot of narrative, obviously, as you're more than well aware, in the last couple of weeks pertaining to housing. Is there within the government plans a proportion of housing being set aside for people, social or affordable housing for people with disabilities?
Really glad you've asked that. I saw that come up in the chat there as well. Yes, there will, and we're going to publish that in our Housing for All plan, which I touched on very briefly in my opening remarks. What this country needs is a multi-annual plan on housing. We can't just go year to year, okay? The councils and the market need to know what the investment the state is making. The state, by the way, is the biggest builder by a mile in the country at the moment. Last year, the country delivered just over 20,000 homes. Over 40% of them were actually public homes. And this year will be closer to 50%. So the state is intervening in a way never done before. 2.1 billion euro in new capital this year alone. So whilst there's a lot of discussion around international investment, what's not recognized by some is the fact that the state is more involved than it has been in generations. In relation to housing for people with disabilities, it's something I've met with Minister Anne Rabbitte about, in which we're working a program on. Actually, in Fingal, if I could use an example, Fingal and other local authorities that I'm encouraging to do is what's called design for communities and design for life. Okay, is that most homes should be designed to suit all different abilities or special needs. And I visited homes actually in Rollastown, fantastic development there, and in Ballybockle as well, in North Dublin, that are designed for that very purpose, with very, very slight adaptations, or in some instances, no adaptations. But what we've also done is to make sure that those with disabilities and with special needs are actually recognised properly on the housing waiting list too. So there's one, the public house provision. And in many instances, we've found that someone with a disability can be waiting a significantly longer length of time than someone without. And we want to redress that balance, which we will be doing in our Housing for All plan. But it's really where we want to get to is that we're ensuring that there are specific targets, which there are for some local authorities, for delivery of homes in that space.
Okay.
And overall, Anthony, sorry if I could say, the overall target we need to be hitting is 33,000 homes a year. So like that's where we need to be getting to. We're way off that at the moment, and we're going to have to, you know, build that trajectory towards that 33,000. Sorry.
So while we're on that point in the delivery numbers, so we're at sort of 20,000 for last year, and we need to be delivering somewhere in 33,000 homes. In relation to local area plans, there are some constraints on local authorities in zoning sufficient land for housing under the NPF guidelines. Do you have any view on that?
Yeah, just to talk in general terms, because the Minister for Housing, as you'll appreciate, I can't talk about a specific local area plan or a county plan because I'm precluded from doing that. I think, to be honest, there are challenges with the NPF. It's right that we have a national planning framework, absolutely, and that we look towards, you know, balanced regional development. That's crucially important. I visited our regional cities regularly. There are great plans in place there for further developing. I think the pandemic is actually, in one way, one of the small silver linings to what is a terrible grey crowd is the remote working. Some people moving back towards their own towns, and will help it can help potentially with regional development. But there have been challenges, particularly on the East Coast, with regard to and the Greater Dublin area with regard to county development plans. But I wrote to every local authority just before Christmas as Minister for Housing, and to each Cahill or mayor of each local authority, advising them that, look, our priority is to deliver 33,000 homes per annum. We need to get to that figure, that the local authorities themselves have the reserve function to make their own development plans, and that they're to front load the delivery of their targets, and that we would review and come back and review in 5 years. We're in the middle of a housing crisis, let's be straight about this. And fundamentally, what gets us out of that is supply, and increasing supply in the right areas. So, you know, I have reiterated to each of the local authorities the devolved power that they have as local authorities to deliver homes in their areas, and I've asked them to front load the delivery of their targets. It has been quite difficult, if I could say, for many local authorities in relation to development plans because of the remote meetings. And we are working on something that may help local authorities who are in that space. Fingal, not quite yet, because they're at the early stage in their plan. I think submissions have just closed for the first phase of their plan. There are some others that are further advanced who may be looking for some additional time to go back and look at their development plans. And I'm very open to providing that. I'm actually looking at legislation right now where we could provide an extension to some of the development plans. There'll always be a balance, Anthony, I think, between a local desire to maybe deliver more, but how that fits into the whole national plan. So we do need the national planning framework, but in the short term, and I mean the short term, in these 5 years now, we need delivery on the ground, and we need to be looking at where those homes can be built quicker and more efficiently.
Thank you, Minister. In the Dublin region, we speak specifically about the Dublin region. Many young workers live and call apartments their homes. And given all of the narrative around private equity coming into the market here and buying entire housing estates and so on, I know that I think the overall numbers are quite small. But are we in danger of protecting the housing market and leaving the apartment market to the private equity people? It's a very emotive subject. So it's been back hundreds of years in this country, as you know. So,
yeah. Well, look, I think the emotive nature of the discussion really feeds into what for us, for mainly in Ireland for generations, is the desire to own something for ourselves that's secure. Like I've lived in apartments before myself in different types of homes, and they suit a lot of people. I think one of the issues that we've to grapple with is the viability of building apartments, is the cost of actually building them. So what we don't want, though, and I have been critical about this and I've said this publicly, is we need international investment, absolutely, and we need to make sure that international investment is focused in the right place at building supply and increasing supply. and particularly where there are viability challenges. What we don't need, and what I don't want, is a first-time buyer competing with an international or indeed a domestic fund where housing estates are purchased, or large portions of housing estates, particularly for starter homes. So myself and Minister Donoghue, I've actually published legislation in this regard when I was in opposition toward the end of 2019. So we're looking at some fixes in that space, but whilst being cognizant of the fact that, we need investment to deliver capacity. We need investment for development. Some who have been ultra critical, would, and who are calling for an effective ban on investment, that would have an absolutely catastrophic effect in relation to business, in relation to fundamentally delivering homes for people, be they apartments or houses. Like I was asked on media last week, should we not just ban these funds? Like, it was just, it is emotive. People are angry about it. I get that. We're going to deal with it in a very short space of time, but we got to deal with it appropriately so it doesn't have an unintended consequence, and that we're focusing where we want investment in the right areas. And I expect us to be in a position to do that next week. But for those who purport to have a silver bullet solution to this, that you can simply effectively ban investment in certain asset classes and think that has no impact on not just businesses, but the jobs that those businesses support, really are being disingenuous in the extreme.
Yeah. Could I ask you one other question, just particularly on housing? And it's in relation to, we mentioned earlier about the delivery of housing is probably the single most important issue. But when it comes to delivery of housing, and if we, irrespective of where it is in the country, but if we talk about even Fingal as our local region, like we're building a lot of houses, is the plan to integrate the plans for those houses and the delivery of them with the provision of local infrastructure, schools, roads, etc.?
Yes.
Where's the connection there?
Well, the connection there is with the county development plans, because that's what the local authorities are for, frankly. And in many areas that has happened. What you need to make sure is that the state moves in tandem. So, we've some real life examples of developments happening and there being a lack of provision of school places, in an area. Take school, but then when you actually look at what the reason for that is you could have many reasons why the schools have been identified or indeed even approved. They've been delayed through the planning process in some instances. In some instances, there have been delays in other government departments. So I think when I look at in Fingal in particular, if we use Fingal as an example, because we're talking as Fingal members, if you look at areas that have seen massive growth, my own town, Malahide, since I was born there in 1974, has changed incredibly. If you look at Donabate, the change that's happening in Donabate, you look at the new ring road, the bypass road in Donabate, the now provision of a new sports campus that's going to be there as well. Significant amount of affordable homes. But in Donabate, we've had significant investment in new schools. We have a community centre that was there before the area actually grew to what it is. So we need to look at that. If I look at the investment in Balbriggan as well, indeed in Swords, which is our county town and which is the size of some of our cities, there's certainly more to be done. But what we need to ensure when we're planning for more homes, that we're also planning for the facilities. And I think we're getting a lot better at that. Not perfect by any stretch of the imagination, but if you look at provision of schools, and we have had, particularly in secondary schools this year, an issue in Fingal because of a spike in numbers. It can be tracked back 8 years to primary schools. But a delivery of schools has been much better in Fingal. Not perfect, but the Fingal schools model, which is referred to all across the country, was something that our local authority developed with previous government that my party were members of, to deliver a more efficient way of building schools and the community facilities that go with it. So if you look at what's happened in Swords with Gaelscoil, Bream Bereave and Swords Educate Together, and the delivery of all the other facilities that go with that, and the community facilities, that's an exemplar, that's a model, and that thankfully that's happened right across the county. Can we do better? Yes, we always can, and that's a challenge that fundamentally the local authorities are the ones who plan that through their development plan. One final point on that, which is new for every local authority in the country now, We have given them the effective targets right through the different classes of housing, from social to rental to private, through the housing needs demand assessment, okay, the HNDA. We never had that system to such a degree that at a national level now I can see in Limerick or in Donegal or in Fingal or in South Dublin what they need to be producing each year over the next few years. And that's a system we've developed here, which is in place in Fingal, which was trialed in Waterford, actually, your own county, Anthony, and piloted there, and is a really effective tool now that each local authority is now going to be able to see, well, what do we need? So what level of rental do we need? What level of affordable housing do we need? What social housing do we need? And that we can track that from a national level. It's strange to say we didn't have that before this, but we do have it now. And that's been in place just the last couple of months.
Great, thank you very much. Just moving on now, maybe to some issues that are more relevant, let's say, constituency-wide in relation to and tying them in with the business community. And I noted earlier on, your comments around the business supports, and I can say that, on behalf of the Chamber of Commerce, Fingal Chamber, and indeed in Chambers Ireland, that the supports the government gave very quickly were greatly appreciated by the business community, and there are many thanks to the government for acting so quickly. In relation to the local authority here, we have obviously a commercial rates waiver, but equally the supports that were managed by Fingal County Council. I know from talking to some of my colleagues in the chamber world around Ireland that Fingal were well ahead of most people when it came to getting money out into businesses. Yeah. And I would have to say, while you're here, I'm going to say they did actually an exemplary job.
Agreed.
Exemplary.
Very good of you to say so.
And,
well, they were one thing, Anthony, if we could say, local government were really to the forefront of the state's response to the pandemic. Like, they kept working all the way through it, out on the front line, literally, but making sure that they knew the businesses and they know the communities. So I know in our own county of Fingal, they did an exceptional job in the process and the business restart grants and all the other supports that were administered through the LEOs. It was a really top job.
So I just wanted to note that while you're here. So, and but on the issue, we've come to the airport, Dublin Airport. So we have a couple of component parts here. Is the aviation sector. We just take the airlines. They need long lead times to get back up and running. What's been done by government to stimulate travel in the months ahead? And it's been emotive, it's been difficult. We understand the difficulties that the airlines have. Indeed, my own wife works in Aer Lingus and has done for 33 years. So what are the plans that government have between now and rolling forward through the summer, given that the vaccination program, as you mentioned earlier, is well underway at this stage?
Yeah, and look, the airport, I've been a big supporter of the airport since I came into elected politics, right, going back to 2004 when I got elected to the council. At the development of the airport, the second runway, which I've been very clear about needing that infrastructure, even though there were concerns in the community, and we've tried to address them as best we can. The airport, up to the pandemic, had 20,000 people directly employed on the campus, 143,000 indirect jobs. My wife being one of them, by the way, who was one of those who was laid off as well, and retrained in that. And it's a gem, the airport, for an aviation. Ireland punches well above its weight. So there's a couple of things we need to do. I'm an absolute supporter of us being in the first batch on the pushing for the digital green cert. Okay, then we need to ensure the digital green cert within Europe is implemented and in place urgently. Okay, and I've said that publicly before many other colleagues have as well, because I absolutely recognize the crucial importance of aviation, not just to underpin the jobs and the livelihoods of all those tens of thousands of people, which is really important, but also for the connectivity of our country as an island nation that has become a hub effectively. If you look at where we can travel to pre-pandemic, and the new routes that were there, and the reaches into Asia and the routes to America, and how accessible we are and we were, and what a fine airport we have. Like if I go back to 2008, 2007, all the criticisms about about Terminal 2, if people recall, it was going to be a white elephant. It was going to be like a Taj Mahal. It would never be used. It would be empty. It was opened in a really difficult times in 2009, but we backed that. Now it's packed and we're talking about a third terminal. Aviation can bounce back and it needs government support. So next week when we meet at Cabinet, we've said we'll be doing a further review. I'm sorry, today is the 13th. So I would expect us to do that review the week after next. Aviation needs a clear roadmap. And I want, in Ireland in particular, we need to give that, because we're more dependent we don't have a domestic aviation market to speak of, okay, like other countries would have, like the US, or even within mainland Europe or France, you know, Spain and that on the continent. We're dependent on people flying in and flying out. I would be hopeful that we will see, you know, quite a significant return to aviation toward the end of the summer. But they need a clear path forward. My colleague Hildegard Naughton have been dealing with on this as well, and I've actually met with Recover Aviation myself. I've met with airline workers right the way through this. Also, I want to be able to give them a clear path. So I expect that in the next couple of weeks. The vaccination program is crucial. We do need the digital green cert, antigen testing too, rapid testing. I know there's a view in certain medical circles, but you know, we're going to be living with COVID for quite some time to come. So whilst the vaccination is fantastic, it's magnificent, we need to make sure that our aviation sector gets back up and running as soon as possible, as safely as possible. I've been calling for that, and I'm actually advocating for that at Cabinet.
Yeah, and thank you. And just staying with the aviation sector for a second, we have the North Runway, which is, if you look at it now from the air, it looks, you know, to be well underway. I know it's about 18 months from completion, but that's tied in with the infrastructure required around the airport to feed it. I think Dublin is only the second airport, and I think Warsaw and Dublin are the only two European capitals without a train line, a heavy train line servicing their international airport. And the numbers in Dublin would suggest pre-pandemic we're somewhere in the region of 32 or 33 million people a year. Warsaw, by comparison, was about 11 million, I think. And you know, we've had numerous attempts, I suppose, in the last 15 years about metro for Dublin Airport. Underneath where I'm standing now is the station, the metro station for Dublin Airport. And like, given what's gone on with the pandemic and the huge investment from the state, interest rates are at zero. Are we going ahead with metro?
Yes, and metro is happening, and metro is going to happen. And actually, part of the recovery that we're going to have will be a capital-led recovery, will be a recovery through investment. I've seen so many different iterations of metro, and I say this as a resident as well. Fingal needs it, but Dublin needs it, our airport needs it. And actually, for credibility's sake, there can't be any further delays with it. Now, a lot of work has been done on the ground, a lot of already the enabling works you'll see in some of the planning works you'll see around Swords. So people, and just outside of Swords, you'll see that right now. We have a good project team in place. There's an absolute desire and a firm commitment by government to deliver what has been talked up to now as Metro North. And you will see in the programme for government, and I was one of those who negotiated the programme for government, why I mentioned the number of Fingalians earlier on around the cabinet table, is very clearly in the programme for government is the commitment to deliver metro. So I want to see, you know, ground broken on metro, the potential for future job creation, for improving quality of life for a lot of our people too, by providing a rail network that's not just a coastal rail network that is also under pressure too, frankly. Like, we need a new interconnector in the city, but to deal specifically as metro is an absolute must. It's in the programme for government. We will deliver it, and it will happen.
I think the projected completion date was 2027, and this is the last launch date. And I suppose, you know, I'm heartened to hear that you say it's going to be a capital project-led recovery, because I think that's really important, because the state have to lead on this, because what's happened in the last year or so has been unheralded in any of our lifetimes. You know, it's been, and please God, we'll never see the likes again, because the economy part of the economy just stopped. So it's good to hear that. But when it comes to like the airlines and so on, and we have two very large airlines based out of Dublin Airport here in particular, what's the areas of comfort for them? Because they can't, even if we get a green light today, they won't be flying next week, because
well, I can just assure you with this. Firstly, can I go back to one point I wanted to mention in relation to metro and capital projects? Is right now we're in the middle of the National Development Plan review. Minister Michael McGrath is leading that. I've made detailed submissions from my department, as Minister Eamon Ryan would have as well. we'll be publishing the NDP review in the summer, probably July, and you'll see very clearly in that the commitments to the capital projects like Metro, okay, because that is something that will be there. But now we want to see delivery. It's all delivery. It's good proposal, but it's about delivery now on this project. To turn to the airline question, which is a really good one, I can tell you at a senior level at government as well, there are regular contacts between transport and the airlines. There's certain things that I can't mention specifically now, but what we've been pushing with our colleagues in the European Parliament and the European Commission is to get right behind the digital green cert. And why is that important? The green cert itself is important because Europe, from an airline perspective, is probably going to operate as a block. Ireland isn't going to operate on its own. So if we can, you would have heard talk with the Tánaiste Dimension yesterday in relation to common travel area travel, maybe initially. Not necessarily, that could well be an option. But Europe itself and the US are two main markets there, and then the Middle East. But, so we want to get that up and running as soon as we can. The green cert is crucial in that. We're signing up to it. It's been agreed at a commission at a European Parliament level as well. So I think that is a way forward. I don't think air travel itself is going to return to absolute normal all across the world until we're all vaccinated, frankly. We look at it understandably from our own national perspective, then our nearest neighbor, then Europe, then America. We see what's happening in India and other places at the moment, even in England yesterday. Now you would have seen an increase in parts of Britain of the Indian variant, even though in an area where they have a high vaccination level in Bolton, actually that part of England. So we're always going to have to adjust, but we can't keep airlines furloughed either. Don't forget though, if I could say this, is that when we only have to look back a few short months when the clamour for mandatory hotel quarantine it went as far as some talking for cancellation of routes, postponement of routes, mandatory quarantine for everyone. And even now we have the exception, which I think is really important and may have missed some of the commentary, that fully vaccinated people, there's no requirement for MHQ. I think mandatory hotel quarantine is a blunt short-term measure, which is protective from some variants. We don't want to see that, becoming even a medium-term measure. And then we can start getting back to a kind of a new normal for aviation. The jobs that it underpins, but connectivity for our country, for trade, are just absolutely crucial. And I think we can recover. I think we're in a position to be able to recover, quite expeditiously. And I think the same can be said for aviation, because there will be a pent-up demand. I think there's flights have been announced for next year already. And from looking at some of the initial data, there is a clamour for people to get back travelling. Obviously this summer, if I could encourage people, and I know your own members would be, because it will be an Irish summer holiday, and Ireland has so much to offer, as indeed Fingal does, that a lot of our own businesses who have been closed for so long and are only reopening could really do with the support here in this country. And, in looking at, sort of rediscovering what's great about our own country. And I know a lot of us saw that last summer, and hopefully we'll see it again to support businesses all across this country. But put it this way, aviation's to the forefront of what we're doing. And I'm in regular contact with the sector, as indeed the Taoiseach and Tánaiste are too, Anthony.
Yeah, and just while we're on the staycation market, and I myself holidayed at home last year, as everybody else did if they went anywhere, and it was fantastic. The experience was fantastic. And if we come back to again our local patch here, and we talk about tourism and hospitality, is there a benefit to local authorities, from a local tourism aspect, to encourage people from other parts of the country? And you mentioned earlier, like me being from Waterford, and a lot of my friends would look at, they probably wouldn't know Fingal as such. I live in Dublin somewhere, and it's about marketing the area with all of the attractions we have, and it's about some funding locally to get that message to other parts of Ireland. Because a lot of people are going to weekend breaks, they want to come cycling, they want to come, it's all activity based and it's outdoor now. And we've so much to offer with 88 kilometers of coastline and all the beautiful heritage properties. So is there a plan with the local government and so on, and here locally, that there be a push on getting people from other parts of the country to Fingal?
Yeah, and look, really good question. It's been a challenge over the years, even if you set the pandemic aside, because I remember talking at previous chamber events about if you take international travel, when people come into the airport, even if you got 1% to take a left as opposed to a right, we'd be doing well in Fingal, you know, so that is always a challenge. But within Ireland, I think the unique thing that we have is our effectively in Fingal, our proximity to the city. Okay, one rail line, a coastal rail line and a dark line in that, but that you can be so close to the city yet out in the country. We do very well in Fingal with the Northern Irish market, and there seems to be in certain pockets that we've built up that sort of you know, reputation as well, and where people would spend quite a lot of time, particularly from the north. There is a plan within Fingal. They've actually, I saw just last year that they've been doing some really impressive promotional videos about our different towns, what we have to offer on heritage, our coastline, you know, our rural villages, for cycling, which I know is, you know, which is a big thing as well. What's really exciting in this is I mentioned the Broadmeadows Way or the Fingal Greenway. That could be a colossal and will be a colossal draw. It'll be probably one of the most impressive coastal blueway or greenway, whatever one wants to say, when that's developed. And I really encourage Fingal to, you know, to really move on that, and let's see that come to a reality. But yes, there are plans in place for us to get, you know, visitors to come to here. Dublin actually last summer suffered quite a bit because everyone tended to go west, which is fine from our perspective. We all wanted to get outside our 5K. City breaks weren't the thing for people because they've been stuck indoors. So I think we've got to look at, thankfully this summer, and what government are doing is making sure anything we open up, we're not going to close down again. So whereas last summer, I think people understood potentially the temporary nature of it, this time it's about opening up for good. So it really means that Fingal and Fingal tourism and that can drive what we have in Fingal, which is magnificent. Absolutely.
That's reassuring to hear. And I think what people historically would have come to Dublin to go to a match, you know, a concert or
Sure.
something, and they went into the city. Whereas now we're going to have to drag them out of the city to go out to the regional parts such as Fingal. So it's really, and we might engage with you separately on that.
Well, we can do that. And just one thing to add as well, on the event side of things, we've been very good in Fingal up pre-pandemic in relation to international matches, say from the cricket perspective, but our concerts as well, and all those different type of things. So, you know, now we're going to be able to get back doing that, and that's going to help support it too.
Great, thank you. And I'm very conscious of your time. We have actually run over, so okay. I apologize for that.
That's all right. I'm talking too much. I know that.
No, but it's our fault we ran over. But we've had quite a number of questions. Some we didn't get to. Okay, and but first of all, to close, I want to thank our Chamber President Andrea. In particular, I want to thank Minister Darragh O'Brien for accepting our invitation to speak with all the local businesses who are on this webinar. And thank you for your forthrightness and your honesty, and in particular your time. For all the people who are at this event, if you found this event useful or you've learned something, please let us have the details and we'll know. As mentioned earlier, Fingal, we help businesses of all sizes to grow and to prosper and to develop. And please don't hesitate to contact us. We connect with business and professionals. We provide training services through our SkillNet operation here at Fingal. And we allow people to promote their business and trade internationally, which is one of the key parts we would talk about. And indeed, the pandemic got us on a trade mission to Seattle in the United States last year. And we're traveling with the local authority and so on, but that got shelved as well. So, but anyway, I encourage people to check out any of our upcoming activities. You can go to the website, which is fingalchamber.ie. And thank you to everybody for joining us. Stay safe. Agus slán go fóill.